Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Finding Freedom here on Lions of Liberty. And before we get into today's show, I want to tell you guys about iTrustCapital. It's the #1 crypto IRA platform in the United States. You can self-trade cryptocurrency, physical gold and silver right in your retirement account. Now you get the tax advantages of a traditional IRA. You get them while trading crypto and physical gold and silver. As an iTrust client, you're going to be able to log into your account and self-trade 24/7. Transactions are executed in real time and settle in seconds. They offer more than 25 crypto assets and they're growing. They have transparent pricing. They have the lowest and most transparent costs in the industry by far, and they post the fees right up front so you can see them. iTrust is secure. They use Coinbase custody and Curve to secure your assets. iTrust also has over 1,500 overwhelmingly positive reviews on Trustpilot. Now, here's the kicker, guys. Special offer here. All you got to do is visit iTrust.capital/Lions and sign up today, open an account, move money from an existing 401k, whatever you got to do, and you're going to get $100 of Bitcoin when you fund your account. Go to iTrust.capital/Lions to sign up today.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
All right, we are live, streaming live to the Lions of Liberty Pride on Patreon and Locals here with Gordon Magill. And Gordon's a trucker with over 25 years of experience on the road across 4 countries. And he's here today to talk about what the heck is going on in Canada with the Freedom Convoy. And actually, originally I reached out to Gordon before this all happened. I don't even know if we actually talked at that point in time. But Anthony Meyer, longtime supporter to this show, he wanted me to talk to Gordon about a separate topic, which I can't even remember what it is at this point in time. I think it had to do with the trucker that was speeding and was unable to put on his brakes and had
that fellow in Colorado. Yeah, he crashed in Colorado. Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about that if we have some time. But I want to focus obviously on what's the most important here and what most people want to hear about. But with that note about Anthony, this is his Nittany show. So when you're at the Nittany level in the Lions of Liberty Pride, you get to recommend guests and produce a show. So thank you to Anthony for helping to make this happen. And Gordon, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. And hello, everyone. Hello, Lions of Liberty Pride and all your various fans all across the internet.
Hey, man, you've been all over the place. I saw you an article in Newsweek, right? You've been several other different outlets. You've been on podcasts.
Yeah.
So what's it been like?
So I went home to Canada a week and a half ago to take part in the beginning of this Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa. I am Canadian, but I do live in the United States now. I live in upstate New York, so I'm not that far from Canada.
We won't hold that against you.
No, thank you. I can't win either side of the border I'm on. When I'm down here, I'm an immigrant. When I'm up north, I'm a defector. I can't win. But anyway, so this Freedom Convoy thing kind of came out of nowhere a couple weeks ago. And I have written and spoken on a few podcasts for years previous to this issue coming up about the overregulation of the truck driver, large corporate trucking companies engaging in regulatory capture and screwing the business up. Like, I've been at this for a while. And then when this Freedom Convoy thing came along, I was just amazed at how quickly it came out of nowhere, and it's legitimate grassroots nature. It was literally cooked up by a couple in Alberta and their friends, and then it snowballed through social media. And so I went to Ottawa. I welcomed the Western Canada convoy, which was one of many that came to Ottawa to take part in this protest and are still there. And then I went downtown. I met up with a friend of mine from Alberta whose rig is currently parked on Wellington Street, like 300 yards from Parliament. He's still there. I have a few friends and family in Ottawa, and I met up with them, and we went down and supported the truckers. And I came home, and within hours of the weekend, the media smear campaigns began saying, we're all fringe right-wing Nazi extremists, and there's a guy with a Confederate flag, and we should just not listen to any of these guys, and I had to respond. I couldn't deal with the smearing of my people based on like 2 guys with a flag out of what was possibly 100,000 people in Ottawa on Saturday. And even if it wasn't 100,000, it was in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And these guys
you keep seeing, it's not like you're seeing, multiple pictures of different trucks and different flags. It's the same flag. Like that's all I've seen.
This is what the media does. They latch on to the fringe guys way out over here who may have been plants. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. The government's not above trying to make its enemies look bad. So they've latched onto this and they won't let it go. So I responded. I wrote this article in Newsweek. And one of the points I wanted to make in the Newsweek article was that this is a legit grassroots movement, right? Like all their funding has been through GoFundMe, which was then stolen this weekend. Like $9 million that was supposed to go to the organizers. GoFundMe turned it around and sent it back to all the donors. And in increments of like $20, $50, $100. There's no connection between the Freedom Convoy and any unions, any other institutional labor organizations, any of Canada's political parties, anybody with any power in the Canadian government or Canadian society whatsoever. So like, because none of these people have any claim to it, they can't take credit for it and they can't control it. And one of the things I've noticed in sort of leftish online discourse, certain quarters of left media, are all these people freaking out about like, well, these aren't real workers. They're the petit bourgeoisie, or they're reactionaries, or they're being funded secretly by billionaires. But if you actually look at the facts, who's being funded here by billionaires? The biggest representative organization of the trucking industry in Canada are called the Canadian Trucking Alliance. Who funds the Canadian Trucking Alliance? Massive trucking corporations that have thousands of trucks who are owned by billionaires and shareholders, publicly traded companies. The Canadian Trucking Alliance has attacked the Freedom Convoy publicly in the media. They support Trudeau's vaccine mandates, and they are donors to the Liberal Party of Canada, who are currently in charge. So all these dumbasses in the media who are claiming that billionaires are supporting us are actually reporting the opposite, right? The opposite is actually what's happening. Billionaires are supporting Trudeau.
And it's not like you can't like fake a protest like this because you have actual trucks. Like you can't just, manufacture fake trucks. I mean, these aren't coming out of thin air. So
no, and they're mostly owned by farmers. Like I was there. I was in Ottawa. I've met all these people. Most of them are like independent owner operators or company drivers. I mean, there's people trying to like hang on this pet entry. Like, well, if you're an owner operator, that means you're a capitalist. And if you're just a company driver, that means you're the proletariat. It's ridiculous. There's all across the spectrum, owner operators, drivers, supporters that showed up for this thing. But a lot of them typically are farmers with their own trucks that haul their own grain from Western Canada, guys on the prairies, guys with their own logging trucks, guys who work for small companies, like a family-owned company that's got 5 or 6 trucks. They're coming to support this. A lot of people came in their own vehicles. We were getting all these numbers of about like thousands of vehicles in this convoy. Well, yeah, most of them were actually pickup trucks because a lot of the guys who've been laid off because of the vaccine mandate and crossing the border can't actually take their company's big rig to the protest. So they're bringing their own vehicle, or they're bringing an RV, or they're like towing a trailer with a homemade sign on it. Like come one, come all. It's actually, there's a quite broad spectrum of people involved in this. And like I said, all of this disinformation and smearing going on in the media, I couldn't stand by and watch it happen, which is why I've written these articles.
So how did this, you mentioned a little bit there at the beginning that this just how crazy this is, how this came together with just, a couple talking around the kitchen table. And it didn't seem like it actually happened. In the matter of a week to a week and a half, all of a sudden you have, one of the largest protests in the modern era. So how were they able to bootstrap this, raise upwards of, I think, 10 million on GoFundMe that was then canceled out. And then quickly, I think another 5 million, maybe more than that. I haven't checked or haven't heard recently on Give, Send, Go. How did this happen?
Well, I think how it happened was you have to understand. I mean, you're in the United States. In Canada, we've had some pretty atrocious lockdown measures, both at the provincial and federal level. And people have had enough. So when this movement came out on social media, it touched something deep in the Canadian collective psyche that said that was like a talisman. We have had enough. We have had enough of our lives being interrupted. We have had enough of the psychological warfare. We have had enough of masks. We have had enough of vaccine passports and the bifurcation of society between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, which is basically medical apartheid. And the general Canadian public has had enough of this garbage. And so they glommed onto it. So every time like a convoy would get organized, say in Vancouver or Calgary, wherever, they would come out trucking, and people would like hang out on overpasses or on the side of the highway waving signs. And as the Western Canada convoy came east, all those videos would get shared around the world, and then you would see more of it in Ontario and Manitoba and Quebec and the Maritimes, and it just snowballed. It was like a literal social media snowballing thing because the message resonated with people. We have had enough of this garbage, and we want our regular open society back.
So, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked before the show. But you look at the way Trudeau has reacted to this, and I mean, Trudeau, I think, is a very stupid person. Because if he was smarter, I think there's much better ways to deal with this, and he could have saved some face. Which at this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen or how it's going to play out. But Trudeau has tried to what he confiscated gasoline, which I don't know how real that was, or just a show for the cameras. And the military the military in Canada has, they're not getting involved. They're standing down. The Ottawa police are seemingly not getting involved. So what happens next here? It's kind of at a standstill. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, yeah, Trudeau is in a rock and a hard place. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about Canadian politics, because in Canada, They have the British parliamentary system. And last year, Trudeau called an election because it's under the Prime Minister's prerogative to call an election whenever he wants, as long as he does it within every 5 years. So Trudeau mistakenly thought that everybody loved him because of his COVID regime stuff, and he called an election, and then nothing changed. He was already in a minority parliament position, so he has enough seats. He has more seats in parliament than the other parties, but not enough seats to form a clear majority, which means he has to work with other parties to get legislation passed. This past election did not change that. So he's in this position where his claim to power is contingent on keeping the support of the small minority of people who already support him. And if he is seen to cave to us, that small minority will become a much smaller minority. And if there's a non-confidence motion or that triggers another election, he's probably toast. That said, he also can't keep ignoring us. As of our talking, as far as I know, Trudeau and his people still have not met the organizers of the convoy. They have talked to the media. They have had committees in Parliament. They have talked about the truckers, but they have not spoken with us. Right? Like, what kind of leader does this?
Which is crazy. That's absolutely insane.
It is. And Trudeau already looks like an idiot because he tried to like meme this into becoming the January 6th of Canada. So literally last Saturday when I was in Ottawa, he skipped town and went to a chalet somewhere out in the hills in Quebec with his family because he feared for his life or feared for his safety. And since he's left, what has happened in Ottawa? There's been no violence. The Ottawa police have said it's been peaceful. No matter what the media says, nothing bad has happened. They tried to say that like truckers stole food from this shelter for the homeless, which upon investigation, there was no evidence of it. What happened is other people that may or may not have been supporters of the protest came in, trying to get food, and then they wouldn't wear masks and they might have been aggressive. And the staff at this place didn't feel comfortable. There was never any theft. Since then, the truckers have opened their own community kitchen called Coventry, and all of the food that keeps getting donated to them by the tons, they're cooking food and giving it to anybody that comes by, homeless, supporters, not supporters, general public, or otherwise. There's been dance parties in the street. The organizer of one of Canada's biggest electronic dance music festivals played this past Saturday night. He played like for 6 hours at a renegade sound system down the street from Parliament. On Sunday, there was a family day where they had inflatable bouncy castles for kids, and you could bring your kids to meet truckers and pull their air horns and check out their cabs. So it's been the opposite of what the media is trying to tell you. Yet Trudeau hides from us and pretends that we are like insurrectionists. And the media goes along with it because they're paid for by Trudeau. Most of the Canadian media receives subsidies from the federal government. We have a one-party state media that pretends that like they're diverse. It's bonkers.
Mm-hmm. It's probably similar to the U.S. I mean, at least in the U.S., if you think about it, all the media is they're collecting money for ads. And what are most of the ads? Most of the ads are pharmaceutical ads or political ads for the most part. So that's who pays their salary. So what do you think the news is going to be? So I want to get back to, I did see recently, I think it was today when I saw it, that the Freedom Convoy, the media team, or whatever sort of PR arm that they have, they've put out the call for regular people or anybody who supports this cause to really think about coming to Ottawa. So what do you think is the plan there, and
I think
how will that help the cause ultimately?
I think the plan there is the organizers of the Freedom Convoy are advised by some very intelligent people, some really good lawyers. They have scientists to back them for our claims about these vaccine mandates. There's some really smart people there. And what they're seeing is they're studying previous protests in Canada that have taken place recently to see how they went down, how the police reacted, how the government reacted, and what was the outcome, right? Like they're not flying into this blind. And so in 2010, there was a big protest in Toronto against the G8. And the Ontario government changed some rules for like engagement for the police. And they started using this strategy called kettling, where they have lines of police officers coming in and boxing people in on the streets. Now, there's some discussion about whether or not that's going to work with all these trucks in the way and, lots of people around. I don't know about that. However, the organizers feel that if we have more people in Ottawa with their cell phones out, videotaping the RCMP, engaging in this practice, if they in fact do that,
RCMP stands for
the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They're the federal level police in Canada. There's some provinces have their own police. So in Ontario, there's the Ontario Provincial Police. In Quebec, there's La Sûreté de Quebec. Newfoundland has the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. Most other provinces will have their own local, regional, or city cops, but most of it is covered by the RCMP. The city of Ottawa has a problem on its hands because the Ottawa Police Department leadership is on the side of the government, but all of the cops are on our side and are only sort of doing what they're told, but for the most part are cooperating with the truckers. As far all the people I've spoken with in Ottawa, the cops have been nice for the most part, and the truckers are cooperating with them, and everything's fine and peaceful. That's a problem for Trudeau. So he can't trust the Ottawa city cops. And for whatever reason, the OPP aren't getting involved. So he's bringing in the heavies. He's bringing in the RCMP. He can't bring in the military. Somebody in the Ottawa media or maybe the Ottawa police made a suggestion a few days ago that perhaps we should consider bringing in the military. The following day, a spokesperson for the Canadian Armed Forces unequivocally denounced that and said, we're not getting involved. This is not our jurisdiction. This is not our job to get involved with this. This is on the city of Ottawa. We're not touching it. So Trudeau is limited to who he can use to try and clear the truckers out, right? He doesn't have any support from the tow truck companies. They've been talking about, well, let's just tow all these trucks out of here. Well, you need to have big truck tow rigs. Well, guess what? The companies and the drivers at the big truck towing companies are on our side. They're in solidarity with us. So those people told the city of Ottawa, well, all our drivers have COVID. We're not available. The city of Ottawa has got no friends, right? Trudeau has no friends other than the media and the establishment shitbags who keep lying about us all the time and want to just like pretend we don't exist or pretend that we're fringe right-wing extremists. So the only thing he's got left is the RCMP, which I think is why you saw this SOS video from the organizers last night saying, hey, everybody, if you can, come to Ottawa, bring your cameras, like, let's document this because this is the last thing we think they might use against us. And the more people that are here to see it and document it and talk about it, the less chance it's actually going to happen.
So what the Freedom Convoy, do they have a list of demands? Is it essentially, are they just demanding to get rid of all the COVID restrictions?
The list is real simple. An end to all vaccine mandates, an end to all vaccine passports, an end to the COVID regime. Completely. It's not just about the truckers. Like that's what primed it. That was the catalyst for it. But this protest is much larger in scope, and it's larger, but also focused only on this stuff, right? There could be any number of other issues, but we are tight on this. And all of the COVID stuff. Other countries are opening up. Other states in the U.S. that never really closed to begin with. The world is moving on past this 2 years of nonsense. The case numbers are going down. The vaccine has been proven to not really work against Omicron, which has already sort of faded away. The scientists are all saying, like, you just have to sort of deal with it. It's going to be endemic, just like every other flu pandemic that we've known about in human history. And we're all moving on, but Trudeau is not. So there's something deeper going on in the background, whether it's like Trudeau and most of his cabinet being children of the WEF youth leadership summits and being answerable to Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and all these other douchebags. I mean, I won't get into that, but like they do have those connections. And there are corporations, tech companies and pharmaceutical companies working with the Trudeau government to like manage all these QR codes and manage everybody's vaccine status. And they're trying to sell some of their technology to the United States government to do the same in the US. So they're literally, and I say this a lot on Twitter, they're literally trying to construct a biomedical surveillance state.
100%.
So like this is the Alamo against that, right? We don't want any of these mandates that would necessitate the creation of this biomedical surveillance state. And that's it. That's it. We just, no more mandates, no more vaccines, no more passports. That's it. Done.
So I talked about this a little bit last week. I had did a solo show and ranted a little bit about the Freedom Convoy, what was going on, and talk about just how inspiring it was to watch. The videos posted on Instagram and Twitter of the trucks going by and the people out in the freezing cold cheering. It was awesome. I couldn't get enough of it. I was watching them like a crazy person. But the thing that I'm worried about, and maybe I shouldn't be worried about this, is sort of the blowback. This is something that I agree with, and people who are libertarian leaning, libertarians agree with what the Freedom Convoy is doing. But could this possibly turn as the Freedom Convoy itself, with all of these trucks, not working, not, delivering goods, turn into a very bad supply chain crisis that then could boomerang back and sort of turn the tides back in favor of Trudeau.
Well, the problem is with that thesis is that the people who are committed to this are never going to get vaccinated, right? We believe in bodily sovereignty. So even if, this went sideways and the public relations went against us, we're still not going to comply. So that supply chain issue will continue existing, right? And speaking of that, like the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa is not the only protest, right? There's a massive blockade of trucks at the Coutts, Alberta border crossing where Interstate 15 comes up through Montana and is the main drag between Calgary, Edmonton, Alberta, the Prairie provinces, and then down into the United States, Los Angeles, the western part of the U.S. That border crossing has been effectively shut for over a week now. There's another border crossing in British Columbia that's been closed off. There's been a slow roll at the busiest border crossing between Canada and the United States at Windsor and Detroit. That's more or less slowed right down. And now they're talking about a marine blockade. I've heard rumors that there's people on boats that are going to try and block off the Halifax Harbor in Nova Scotia. So like this is not just about Ottawa. This is a nationwide thing, and it's going to cause nationwide supply chain problems. And I mean, they were already there to begin with, right? Like the supply chain stuff. This is the problem. Like Trudeau has shot himself in the foot, right? So he imposed this vaccine mandate a month ago. It started in January, right? So all of these truck drivers who would have already been working through the COVID crisis for the last 2 years were all of a sudden told, if you don't get a vaccine, you can't work. Well, there's no study done anywhere that says truck drivers spread it any more than anybody else. There's no study done anywhere saying truck drivers get or catch COVID any more than anybody else. And we've all been working through this. We are the most essential of essential workers. And then Trudeau just comes along and says, well, you have to get your vaccine now or you're not allowed to work. Oh, I guess we're not very essential anymore then, are we? Right? So like the previous supply chain issues that had already been like stacked up before this happened, Trudeau made it worse. This is on him. Okay?
No, I agree. I agree. It would be hard to believe that there's not going to be, greater supply chain, issues that come because of this. But you bring up a great point. I mean, it's not like the people who are standing for this and risking everything, by going to Ottawa, by, doing these different blockades. It's not like they're going to turn around one day and just say, "Oh, you know what? I'll just get vaccinated." I mean,
yeah, no, people are like a lot of these guys that own their own trucks are literally putting their livelihoods on the line. If their truck gets seized by the government and then they lose it, they're done. You know? And guys that are just regular drivers, what happens if they get arrested or the media smears them or something? And then doofuses like that, members of the Canadian Trucking Alliance won't hire them if they end up on a blacklist. Like we've already gone to the wall. This is the wall. This is the line. This is the Alamo. If Trudeau thinks like he's just going to snap his fingers and say, well, who cares about these guys that are protesting against me? You can't just replace 10% of every truck driver in Canada tomorrow, right? It can't be done.
Yeah, they don't have the robots to do that.
No, I mean they're trying that, but I think that's a lot longer off than some of the pimps would believe.
Yeah, that was a big what was that, 20? Yeah, it was 26. No, that was for this last election. Andrew Yang was talking about that like it was coming, like it was imminent. There were going to be, robot truck drivers. But yeah, I think that's decades away if it ever happens. I mean, who knows?
I think it might happen in certain sectors of the business, but not all of them, and not as fast as they seem to think it's going to. They have a lot of hurdles to jump before that becomes a thing.
So just from like a demographic standpoint, and I'm just trying to get a flavor for how Canada, most Canadians are reacting to this. Do you think that it's basically, that core of, Trudeau's party, that support? Obviously, they're probably behind him. What percentage are they? What percentage are those who are, diehard supporting the Freedom Convoy? And then how many people do you think are just kind of in the middle, like, I don't know what to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was looking at some polling numbers today, and polling organizations either work for different media companies. Even the people on our side, you can't always 100% trust it. So I'm not sure what to make of it. There's numbers getting thrown around. I saw recently that 54% of Canadians, if not support the Freedom Convoy, at least support the idea that the mandates have gone too far and should be ended. I've seen other numbers up at 90%. But if you just look at the politics of it, right? So Trudeau's party, the Liberal Party of Canada, only has 33% of the seats in the House of Parliament. So let's extrapolate that. So if he's got 33% diehard supporters, that leaves 67% who could either be with the Freedom Convoy or in that middle. That means we're in the majority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, most people know truck drivers, right? I think there's something like 350 odd thousand truck drivers in Canada, 400,000 in a population of 38 million. Most people, if you're not an email job cased bug that lives in a condo somewhere that has no connection with the real world, which unfortunately is a lot of urbanites, and Canada's a very urbanized country. I'll grant
unless you're a libertarian podcaster, then you know a lot of truck drivers.
Wow, you want to get into marginal decimal point territory there, bro? That's on you. But millions of people, at least 1 million people, came out to the roadsides to welcome and support these convoys all across the country. And we're not some fringe minority. So, like I say, Trudeau's got a real problem on his hands. We're not going away. The truckers aren't going away. You can't tow them. The army won't cooperate. Most regular Canadians, and I say regular as in not being brain damaged by the CBC and having some connection to the working class, support us. Or at very least, support the idea that the government's out over their skis and they've gone too far.
So let's say, hopefully, that within the next days or weeks or months, whatever it takes, that the Freedom Convoy wins, the COVID regime loses, all of the mandates and constraints and vax passes, they all go away. What do you think needs to happen in Canada? But also, this could be any country, United States, European countries, whatever. What needs to happen to prevent this, do you think, from happening again? Because this could easily happen again, where the next pandemic or climate passes or whatever the hell the governments want to throw at us.
Well, this is the thing. You raise a very good point. This COVID stuff is a testing ground for the next one. And a lot of people have said this before us, that the climate alarmists are going to try and bring in climate mandates and impose on our rights to use energy of our choosing, right? You see a lot of these leftist dingbats online saying you're not allowed, you shouldn't be using stoves inside, like having a propane range or a natural gas grill in your house is bad. Driving cars is bad. The COVID regime, I think, is being used by these people as a test case. So what happens when we ultimately prevail is that we can't let our guard down, because the powers that be that are behind all this are relentless and are looking for the next thing that they can use to control us, which is going to be either climate or something else. And I think people really need to have a deep down look at what happened in the last 2 years, and then compare that to other things that in history that have happened where we let our guard down, and the left and the people that support all this garbage, whatever stripe they are, they've abandoned concepts like bodily sovereignty, about you being able to make your own health decisions. Like, if you're a libertarian, the ultimate thing is the individual and their ability to choose and live peacefully with everybody else without coercion, fraud, or force. These people are all about coercion and force. So, like, we can't, yeah, it's great. If we beat Trudeau, awesome. Most of the people involved in this are just going to go and carry on with their lives. But we can't not forget what happened here. We can't not forget that these guys basically shut society down for 2 years and tried to impose biomedical fascism on us in the form of vaccine mandates. And I choose those words very, very, very carefully. The term fascism gets thrown around a lot by all kinds of stupid people who don't even know what the original version of it meant, who don't even know what Mussolini meant, or FDR, or Hitler, or any of the other people that are accused of being fascists, or who are the progenitors of it. It is the government and corporations working together to manage the economy and to manage society. What we have here is Trudeau working with big tech and big pharma, and this is happening in the United States as well and in other countries, to create surveillance systems for keeping an eyeball on the average person, right? And for heavily coercing or forcing them into taking pharmaceutical products they don't want to take. I mean, this is literally government and corporate collusion in attempting to manage all of our lives. This is textbook fascism. And there's morons out there saying that me and my fellow truck drivers trying to defend against this are the fascists. It's 1984 level bullshit. Right? And we have to keep on guard for that, because they're going to keep trying to push it.
Well, it's the only playbook that they have to respond. They can't respond, with actual facts, because if when you stack up the facts against each other, they lose. So they go back to calling the other side fascists, racists, Nazis. It's the same thing when you look what's happening to Joe Rogan right now. Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's not even like a controversial guy. He's not a political guy.
The only reason that Rogan is controversial is because he's so wildly popular, right? Let me be so bold as to state there's a similarity, almost an analog, between what's happening with the Freedom Convoy and what's happening with Rogan. Bear with me.
Yeah, go for it.
Rogan, right, who's a comedian and a former television host and an MMA guy, he's had his fame and his successes before his podcast started. Then he starts a podcast in his living room with his friends, and then it becomes the biggest thing on the internet. And you would have seen these Nielsen ratings that came out a few months ago that showed that every single one of Rogan's episodes would, on average, get 11 million viewers. The next TV personality south of Rogan in that ranking was Tucker Carlson at like 4 million. And then it all descended from there. So all the mainstream media people are getting creamed by this like comedian martial artist guy with a podcast. So they have to attack him because he's beating them at their own game with something he built himself, literally out of his living room, that grew organically. And he was just popular with the people. Take the Freedom Convoy. The Freedom Convoy started in someone's living room or kitchen table. Tamara Litch and this other guy, BJ Dichter, and their friends in Alberta. It started out with a small group of people in Alberta. Within 2 weeks, it was a worldwide phenomenon, had gained $10 million in donations on GoFundMe, captured the heart of a nation, and had 10% of truckers in the entire country supporting them, at least. I mean, the Trudeau keeps saying like 90% of truckers are vaccinated. Well, just because they're vaccinated doesn't mean they support Trudeau. It just means they took the shots to keep their jobs. So,
and honestly, I don't believe those numbers. I don't believe the 90% truckers vaccinated in Canada. I don't believe the numbers in the United States they're saying percentage vaccinated.
Okay, we can set that argument aside, but like let's just say, for sake of argument, the numbers are true. In that 90% of truckers that may or may not have been vaccinated, most of them support us. Most of them know Trudeau's full of shit. Most of them know the government's full of shit. They just took the shots to be able to keep their jobs and feed their kids. And that's a rational choice to make given the circumstances, right? So we have this organic convoy that, like Rogan, it's popular amongst the people, it's supported by the people, and it blew the doors off of all these institutions that didn't see it coming and have no claim to it. Like I mentioned earlier, we were discussing this. They're not attached to any unions, not attached to any labor organizations, not attached to any political parties, not attached to any media, not attached to anything. Just like Rogan wasn't. Rogan started his own thing, ran with it, became super popular, and now all the media people are attacking him and using any excuse under the sun to throw shit at him, which is exactly what's happening with the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah, and another similarity, you can't control either of them. You can't control the Freedom Convoy because it is a grassroots movement, and it's, there's no, like you said, there's not a union behind it or any source of power that could be influenced or manipulated. And with Rogan, say Rogan sells out, and he kind of has sold out to a certain extent, agreeing to, take down 70 episodes or whatever it was. But say he sells out even more so, and his show just turns into like a cable news type show. People just he'll lose everything. He'll lose his whole audience. People don't want that. People want what they had before. That's why they listen to it. That's why they watched it.
Thing. Like that's a perfect phrase. People want what they had before. People want the society we had in Canada and in the United States and in the rest of the world. We want what we had before this COVID regime took over in response to a virus that has an infection fatality rate across the average 0.02%. They have blown this thing so far out of proportion, bifurcated our society with psychological warfare, and people have had enough. Right?
Yeah. 100% agree. And I'm going to pivot a little bit off of COVID just for the end of the interview here, because it's not often that I get a trucker on the show. And, I'm always curious why so many, freedom loving individuals, people who, are libertarian, get into trucking. So do you have a theory on why so many? Cause I think honestly, it feels like sometimes like 5 or 10% of our audience are truckers.
Okay,
so why do you think that is
going on here? There's two things going on here. So in podcast world, truck drivers are heavily represented in the listenership, right? Because we have all this time behind the wheel, right? And, I grew up, I've been a trucker for 25 years. So when I started trucking, all there was like AM radio, FM radio, books on tape, CDs, right? Then podcasting comes along and you can listen to whatever you want. You can download anything you want on your phone, right? That's part of the reason why podcasting took off. We could bypass the media gatekeepers and find whatever interested us. And truck drivers, there's 1.8 million active CDL holders driving big trucks in the US. Never mind local delivery guys, never mind people that like traveling salesmen. Any other reason you need to be on the road lots. This is a great medium for that. So truck drivers are heavily represented in podcast listenership. The other thing is truck drivers as a cohort, a subculture, a group, however you want to categorize us, we drive truck because our personality is not disposed to working with other people or being around other people all the time. Like, we like being by ourselves. This is not the job where if you're a really social person, you're going to be successful at it because you're in the cab of a truck all day. Like, you might interact with customers when you're loading or unloading, you go to the truck stop. It's not completely lonely, but the majority of your day you are by yourself, and you have to have the personality that goes along with that. The personality types of people that like to be by themselves are also the types of people that like to be left alone, don't like to be told what to do, don't like office politics, don't like managers. Well, what are libertarians? People that don't like to be told what to do, right? So like all of this stuff tracks, right?
Yeah, and honestly, if you connect all the dots, podcasting as it started up, truckers probably played a large role in just the growth of podcasts in general because they had this huge demand. So, and podcasts have been a huge part in spreading ideas about freedom and liberty. So really, truckers have been the catalysts for pulling that demand curve for podcasts and helping to spread the message of liberty. So you can take credit for that too as a trucker. But I'm always curious because every trucker has at least 1 or 20 crazy stories of stuff that's happened to them out on the road. And you have a career, you've worked in several countries. So whenever I talk to a trucker, I'm always curious to ask for one of those crazy stories. If there's one that you can share that jumps to mind right away, that is just a crazy story.
All right. Well, I'll tell you a story about some hitchhikers I picked up once. I've been on both sides of the hitchhiking equation. I've hitchhiked when I was younger. I've also been a trucker and picked up hitchhikers. So I'm in Alberta. I unloaded something in Calgary, and I had this lowboy trailer, and I had something on it from Calgary that I had to take to Winnipeg, and then I had to unload it in Winnipeg, reload some other stuff, and then bring that back down to our home base in Hamilton. So anyway, I leave Calgary. I stop in an hour east of Calgary. There's a place called Strathmore, and there's a big truck stop there. And there's a set of lights along the Trans-Canada Highway, and I slow down for the lights, and just heading east out of Strathmore, there's this gentleman standing on the side of the road hitchhiking. Pick him up. He's a Newfoundlander, and he's trying to go back home to Newfoundland. So throw him in the truck. We get yapping, usual hitchhiker driver talk. No problem. A couple hours later, there's a town on the eastern side of Alberta called Medicine Hat. And I stopped in Medicine Hat to get a coffee. There's a shopping mall with like a big, huge parking lot. You can park a bunch of trucks in it. And there's a Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is like this coffee chain in Canada. Mm-hmm. There's a few of them in the U.S. as well. So we go to Timmy's. The Newfie guy has a cigarette. We got a couple of coffees. We're standing outside the coffee shop. And I noticed on the ground, on the sidewalk in front of the coffee shop, there's like these backpacks, and there's a dog and a cat. So there's this dog, and it has like a horse saddle on it, like a pack saddle. What? And on top of the saddle, on the dog's back, is a cat. So this dog is lying down, and then there's a cat lying down on top of the dog, and there's these 2 backpacks and a sign that says Ottawa. And there's these 2 hippies sitting inside the Tim Hortons. So I grab the Ottawa sign, and then I knock on the window, and I point at the sign, and then I point at the hippies as if to say, "Is this you?" And they give me the thumbs up. All right, right on. So I wave them out. So they come out. We shoot the breeze. I say, "All right, you can hop in with me." So now I have me in this T800 Kenworth driving, this Newfie guy in the jump seat, and then this young hippie couple who are from the Ottawa area somewhere, and their dog and their cat in the truck. So away we go. And we head out to Winnipeg, and like Calgary to Winnipeg is 14, 15-hour drive. I get to Winnipeg, and I go to bed, and I told the hippie guy, I said, "Listen," I told the Newfie, I said, "I have to unload and reload. I might be here for a day or a day and a half getting all this taken care of." And I told the hippies from Ottawa the same thing. And the Newfie guy took off and kept hitchhiking on his own. And this hippie couple pitched their tent behind the old Mint truck stop on the east side of Winnipeg and waited for me. And, I kind of felt bad for them. They're, they don't have very much money. They're young. So I paid for them to have showers. I bought them dinner or whatever. I went into Winnipeg, unloaded my load, reloaded my other load, come back out to the truck stop. They're still there waiting for me. No problem. Hop back in the truck. Away we go. So I pull an all-nighter. I'm leaving Winnipeg in the afternoon. The next major city coming east on the Trans-Canada Highway is Thunder Bay. It's like 5:30 in the morning, and the hippie couple are in my bunk sleeping. I'm driving. The dog's sleeping, and the cat is sleeping. And the sun's just starting to come up, right in my windshield because we're facing east. And then the cat comes out of the bunk and hops on the passenger seat and looks up at me. And I'm driving. And I look at the cat. The cat looks at me. Then the cat jumps up on my shoulder puts its front paws on my shoulder, and the back paws on the seat, and the cat's just sitting there like it's in charge of the cab of my truck, which I thought was kind of funny. Anyway, we carry on. I got these guys as far as Sudbury, where I turned right to go down towards Toronto, and they were going to keep going towards Ottawa, and I dropped them off. Away they go. I go home. And then the next day, I'm visiting a friend of mine, and my friend's mother is there as I'm telling this story to my friend. And I mentioned these hitchhikers and their dog and their cat and the saddle that the dog had and the cat sleeping on top. And my friend's mother shows me a newspaper clipping of this same hippie couple hanging out in Victoria, BC, and a journalist in Victoria had taken a photo of their dog and their cat and put it on the AP wire, and it went around to all these newspapers all around the world, because like this is 2001, 2002. And they should. I'm looking at this newspaper clipping. I'm like, I picked those guys up hitchhiking in Medicine Hat. Like what a small world. And it so anyway, yeah, that's my story. Multiple hitchhikers at once, dogs and cats, and just trucking all the way across Canada.
So why? So did the cat actually sit on the dog's back and like walk on the saddle? Was that?
Yes, correct.
That's
and slept
ridiculous.
there. Yeah.
I knew you would have something that wouldn't disappoint. But so before I let you go here, I just want to get, if there's anything I haven't asked you about the Freedom Convoy, if there's anything just in general about, that's important to this story, what's going on, or anything else you really wanted to plug or get out there. I just wanted to give you some time to say that.
Well, I appreciate that, and the one thing I'm going to reiterate and give great import is the fact that this is not just about truckers. This is about everybody. This is about everyone who's been affected by lockdowns, vaccine mandates, the psychological warfare of the COVID regime. This is not just about truckers. The organizers have made this very clear, despite the smears in the media saying we're racists and right-wing fringe people and anti-vaxxers and all the rest of this garbage. It is not just about us. It's about everybody. It's about getting society out from underneath all of this garbage and returning us to some semblance of normality, and for preventing the creation of a biomedical surveillance state that's going to track your every move and regulate your life to the nth degree based on whether or not you've submitted to their pharmaceutical experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want everybody to know.
And that's important to highlight, I think, because when you see, at least in the U.S., of course, I don't watch the news here. I don't even know what they're saying on the news, really. I get all my news on Twitter, but I would assume they're probably saying the same thing you see Trudeau saying, where these are all racists and Nazis, and which
I'm looking
doesn't
forward.
even make any sense.
If you post this on social media, if there's any of your listeners who are more connected to the American Freedom Convoy that's planned to leave California and go to DC, I only have heard of one guy, and I follow him on Twitter, and he doesn't post there very much. I'm assuming he's busy. But if there's any information that you guys have on the American analog to the Canadian Freedom Convoy, post it, send it to me. I'm on Twitter at Ghost of Gord. I'd love to hear about it. I would love to help you amplify your message. I'm here for my American brothers and sisters. I'm here for everybody around the world who's fighting these mandates, whether they're truckers, non-truckers, or just regular people. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that. Definitely follow Gordon on Twitter at Ghost of Gord. Just a couple, was that yesterday or 2 days ago? You had an awesome thread on there, just breaking down, the current status, what was going on with the Freedom Convoy. Like we talked about at the top of the show, you're very plugged in. People who are right there on the ground in Ottawa. So definitely highly recommend following Gordon. And thank you for giving.
That's been my beat here. I've sort of been thrust into this position as a citizen journalist, if only because I was already opinionated on the trucking business, and then this thing came along, and just like what you're doing with your podcast and every other podcaster is doing, is we're giving voices to people and movements and ideas that the mainstream media and the regime media would rather ignore, pretend we don't exist, or smear us. And so here I am standing up for my fellow truck drivers, just this little account on Twitter, and just by reporting on it, it's turned into a thing. And if I can be helpful in that regard, good.
Hey, it's crazy when you think about it. Even back in 2001, when you were driving that hippie couple and their dog and their cat around, if the same thing had happened with a massive trucker protest, and you wanted to get your opinions out, then really there weren't ways to do it. I mean, there was like blogs and stuff, but you didn't really have podcasts, and it just was much more easily accessible to influence the media.
Yeah, much more difficult back then, for sure. I mean, as much as people want to trash Twitter and social media for being cesspools, and they can be, they're also very effective tools if used correctly.
100%. Well, Gordon, thank you for your time, and we'll be staying up to date, following you on Twitter as this continues to develop, and maybe have you back on to get another update.
Yeah, no, anytime, brother. Thank you very much for having me, and I'd like to say hello to my fellow truckers and trucker podcasters like Reed Coverdale and Tommy Salmons, and that whole crew out there. Go follow them, and thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our message.
All right, thanks, Gordon.